In this story, you'll hear about one of the funniest and most unbelievable roommate experiences ever. It starts like a normal day, but soon turns into complete chaos filled with surprises, laughter, and lessons about patience and friendship. When I first moved to the city, I was so excited to finally live on my own. Well, almost on my own. Rent was expensive, so I decided to find a roommate. After weeks of scrolling through endless ads, I found what seemed like the perfect place. A clean, bright apartment with a balcony, close to my new job. The rent was reasonable and the pictures looked amazing. It honestly felt like I had won the lottery. The ad mentioned a friendly and easygoing roommate named Jake. That sounded harmless enough. We exchanged a few messages. He seemed polite, funny, and normal. He said things like, "I'm very chill. You won't even notice I'm there." That, in my mind, was exactly what I needed. I just wanted peace and quiet after long workdays. When I went to see the apartment, Jake greeted me with a big smile. The place looked just like the pictures. Tidy, full of sunlight, and decorated with plants. He offered me coffee and even helped carry my suitcase when I decided to move in. I remember thinking, wow, I got lucky. This guy seems great. The first few days went smoothly. We talked about random things, music, travel, funny life stories. He seemed a bit eccentric, but in an entertaining way. He told me he was a musician, working on some experimental sound project. I didn't think much of it at the time. At night, I would lie in bed, listening to the city's sounds through the window, feeling grateful for my new beginning. But little did I know, my quiet city life was about to turn into the craziest adventure I could ever imagine. Because living with Jake was nothing like I expected. The first week went well. Jake and I shared polite small talk, split the bills, and even cooked dinner together once. He made pasta and it was surprisingly good, except for the part where he added peanut butter to the sauce. I remember staring at my plate, trying to decide whether to eat it or just quietly die inside. He looked at me proudly and said, "It's my secret ingredient. You'll thank me later." I didn't. But the real surprises began soon after. Jake had a very unique schedule. He slept during the day and stayed awake all night. At first, I thought he worked late shifts or something. Then, one night around 2 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like an animal in pain. I froze, trying to understand the noise, until I realized it was Jake, singing, loudly. I got out of bed and walked to the living room. There he was, standing in front of the TV with headphones on, waving a wooden spoon like a microphone. He didn't even notice me until I said, "Jake, what are you doing?" He looked at me with excitement in his eyes and said, "Practicing for my new album. It's called The Sound of the Inner Soul." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to laugh, another part wanted to cry. I went back to my room and tried to sleep, but every few minutes there was another sound. Drums, clapping, strange vocal noises. The next morning, Jake acted as if nothing had happened. He made pancakes, humming happily. When I mentioned the noise, he smiled and said, "Oh, that? You'll get used to it. Art can be loud sometimes." That was the moment I realized I was not just living with a roommate. I was living with a full-time show, and the show had just begun. It was a Wednesday night, and I had an important presentation at work the next morning. I went to bed early, determined to get a full night's sleep. Everything was quiet for about 30 minutes. Then, suddenly, my room started shaking with a deep bass sound. I jumped out of bed, completely confused. Was there an earthquake? No, it was Jake. Again. I stormed into the living room and found him standing on top of the coffee table, surrounded by flashing lights and wires. He had somehow turned the apartment into a mini concert hall. The lights were connected to his laptop, pulsing in rhythm with the music. He was wearing sunglasses and shouting into a hairdryer, apparently his version of a microphone. I shouted over the noise, "Jake, what on earth are you doing?" He looked at me, grinning like a kid, and yelled back, "It's my midnight energy session. Inspiration strikes when the moon is high." Couldn't believe it. "Jake, it's 2 in the morning. I have work tomorrow." He nodded seriously. "Don't worry, man. I'll keep it down." Then he immediately turned the volume up. I gave up. I went back to my room, put on my noise-canceling headphones, and buried my head under the pillow. But even then, I could feel the bass vibrating through the floor. At around 3 a.m., there was a loud knock on the door. It was our neighbor, an older woman in her robe, holding a broom like a weapon. She yelled, "If this happens again, I'm calling the police." Jake apologized politely, but as soon as she left, he whispered, "Some people just don't appreciate art." That night, as I lay awake listening to the faint hum of his art, I realized I was living in a place where sleep, logic, and peace did not exist. It was no longer an apartment. It was a stage, and Jake was the star performer. After the midnight concert, I tried to set some boundaries. I told Jake, as calmly as I could, that I needed quiet at night and that maybe he could use headphones. He nodded, smiled, and said, "Totally, man. I respect your space." For a brief moment, I actually believed him. The next night was peaceful. No drums, no screaming, no glowing lights. I thought, maybe he listened. I went to bed happy, but the calm didn't last long. 2 days later, I came home from work and opened the door, and froze. The entire living room had changed. My couch was covered in aluminum foil. My chairs were stacked upside down, and there was a huge cardboard box in the middle of the floor with a handwritten sign that said asterisk, "Do not enter. Recording in progress." Asterisk. I stood there in shock. Jake popped out of the box wearing sunglasses and a cape made out of a shower curtain. "You're just in time," he said. "I'm filming a music video about rebirth and cosmic energy. You can be the camera guy." I didn't know whether to laugh or run. He had candles everywhere, and one of them was dangerously close to the curtain. I quickly grabbed it and blew it out. "Jake, you're going to burn the place down." He looked offended. No, it's symbolic fire. It represents transformation." I sighed. "It represents an actual fire hazard." From that day on, every time I came home, there was something new. Glitter all over the bathroom, strange noises from the kitchen, or Jake meditating in the hallway wearing headphones and whispering to plants. One evening, he brought a group of people over for what he called a sound therapy circle. I came home to find 6 strangers sitting on the floor, eyes closed, humming deeply while Jake waved a feather around them. That's when I realized my apartment wasn't mine anymore. It was his world, and I was just an accidental visitor in it. I reached my breaking point on a Sunday morning. I had just finished my coffee and was getting ready to relax when I heard something strange from the bathroom. A hairdryer, a blender, and what sounded like chanting. I knocked on the door. "Jake, what's going on in there?" He shouted back, "Don't come in. I'm cleansing the energy." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until he came out, wearing goggles, gloves, and a towel wrapped around his neck like a superhero cape. I said, "Jake, we need to talk. Seriously." He smiled nervously. "Is this about the blender?" "Yes, Jake. And the music, and the candles, and the glitter, and the random strangers humming in the living room." He sat down on the couch, finally quiet. For the first time, I saw that he actually looked tired too. "Listen," he said, "I know I'm different, but I just really want to make something meaningful. Music helps me feel alive." Something in his voice made me stop shouting. Beneath all the chaos, he wasn't trying to be annoying. He was just lost in his own world. I took a deep breath. "I get that, Jake, but I need peace. You can make music, just Not at 3 a.m. And maybe don't set the furniture on fire. He laughed. Fair enough. For a moment there was silence, real silence. It almost felt like a miracle. We made an agreement. No music after 10 p.m., no filming inside the apartment, and definitely no spiritual experiments in the kitchen. He promised to change. But deep down, I wasn't sure he could. Because with Jake, normal never stayed normal for long. For about a week, things were peaceful. Jake tried to behave. No loud music, no smoke, no feathers, no strange rituals. I actually started to relax again. But I should have known better. It all ended one Friday night. I came home from work, opened the door, and found the apartment filled with soap bubbles. Everywhere. The floor, the couch, even the ceiling fan was covered in them. Jake stood in the middle of the room, barefoot, laughing and filming himself with his phone. I froze. Jake, what is this? He looked up with a huge grin and said, It's my final performance, the cleansing of the soul. The bubbles represent freedom. Freedom, I said. They represent a destroyed floor and a broken washing machine. Apparently, he had poured half a bottle of dish soap into the washer for special effects. The machine had exploded, and now our apartment looked like a foam party. That was the moment I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I called the landlord, explained everything, and by the next week, Jake was gone. When I came back to the now quiet, empty apartment, I sat on the couch and just listened to the silence. Felt unreal, peaceful, almost strange. I missed nothing about the chaos, but I had to admit, life was never boring with Jake around. A few weeks later, I got a postcard in the mail. It was from him. On the front was a picture of a beach, and on the back he had written, Dear roommate, thank you for surviving me. My new album drops soon. It's called Apologies from the Universe. Hope you like it. I laughed for a long time. Jake was crazy, absolutely wonderfully crazy. But thanks to him, I now had a story that no one would ever believe. And that was the story of my crazy roommate, Jake, a man who turned everyday life into a full-time comedy show. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Daily English Academy, for more fun and real English stories like this one. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had a roommate like Jake? I'd love to read your experiences. See you in the next episode.